And I think the first part that drew me to his work was its inclusivity. Thomas lived in a universe. He thought big, and it was very inclusive. And so his language, he had really invented a language because he wanted to be inclusive. So for him, when he would talk about community, it automatically meant everything, not just humans either. So I carried that with me through, and then I ended up at Columbia doing grad work and my doctoral work there. And I remember in a curriculum course being introduced to the null curriculum. And the big question we asked throughout that whole semester was, who or what is being left out here? And that question continued to haunt me educationally. I would look around the classroom and say, who's being, obviously, the natural world was left out of a sterile classroom in which there weren't even pictures of it on the walls. And other traditions were left out, and many cultures were left out. So to bring them in when they're not represented by other people in the human community became a big piece of what I tried to provide in terms of a context of educating. And just to wind up this, this understanding of inclusivity a bit, I would just say when I came to Loyola, and in my 37 years of teaching here, I was always permitted, if not encouraged, to be inclusive. And I really found that finding God in all things was allowed here. And that teaching of Ignatius really kind of gave me support and legitimacy, because I could always go back to that. And I always mentioned that you know, it was an honor to work in a school that thought that broadly and had it on the sidewalks going into the library. It was to remind students of that. So Thomas Berry was not the commencement speaker, but he got 1 minute. And I wondered what he would say when he stood up before the audience of graduates and family and stuff. And I'll never forget it. And this points to his the second thing that I guess that struck me about him, which was his integrity and graciousness. And he was just an elder and a wisdom figure in the true sense of the word. But he stood up and said, I want to thank this Jesuit university for being the first Jesuit university to bestow such an honor on one whose primary concern is the natural world. And the place erupted. It was really in clapping, and people were stunned, I think, a little bit by it, because what that showed was his self-effacing manner that never focused on himself. I don't think I ever heard him use the word I. He never talked about himself. It was always what he was about, which was trying to point to creation. And I always thought that's kind of the way Jesus was. Jesus didn't talk about himself. He was always talking about the Father who sent him over his shoulder, who he represented. And he came for another 8 years following his honorary degree in the spring of every year, giving a major lecture at large and a LEM workshop for credit, and taped a lot on the side with former faculty like Jerry Fagan and guest faculty who might have, Dan Berrigan, who were here as adjuncts for a semester. It was always the spring when he came. So he left a rich legacy of tapes and manuscripts and interviews that we are now trying to make available to future generations and wider audiences. And so we're hoping to get that work done because the tapes lifespan is coming to an end in terms of the fragility of that medium. So we have to get them up online soon, or else we stand to perhaps lose it. So it's been a very meaningful and life-giving experience for me to have an opportunity to tell this story and to see a future ahead in which new students coming in who didn't have the one-on-one chance to sit down with Thomas around a conference table will still have an opportunity to hear his voice and to witness his charm and kind of meet his integrity that way. So thank you.